Hi, and welcome back to David Pattinson's Accused Friends. I came across a very interesting article in the news this morning under the headline, UK can't rely on inflation to tackle its £2 trillion debt pile. This is in reference to the cost of the lockdown on Great Britain. And for people who follow my videos, you'll know that I predicted a £2 trillion cost of lockdown way back on April 26th, about 11 weeks ago now. And the government have finally caught up to, what was to seem to me to be totally obvious, that the lockdown would cost our country trillions. I mean, I think that 2 trillion now is a conservative estimate, but back then people were giving me a hard time. People were saying, hey, David, you're totally fear-mongering. You know, people I'd known for 30 years were saying I'd finally lost it. There was a particularly unpleasant exchange from a stranger in Marks and Spencer's. And, I feel I've been totally vindicated. I mean, we had during the last general election a choice between Jeremy Corbyn, who was going to spend 100 billion more per year than we brought in, and the Conservatives, who were only going to spend 80 billion a year more than we brought in. And you might remember leading up to the general election, there was a lot of stories in the news about how, Britain just couldn't afford Jeremy Corbyn. I mean, we just couldn't afford it. It was just too much. So 100 billion a year, more than we took in, was just too much. And now when you've got Rishi spending 350 billion a year more than we take in, that's not unaffordable. That's just what we've got to do. It's just the cost of saving all these lives during the lockdown. But of course, we're never actually going to talk about how many lives we saved, because the British people, might revolt. So let's just take a quick look at this story. And it says here, I'll post a link in the description. The UK faces the biggest peacetime deficit in history, with the risk of 4 million people out of work by next year. The economy might not recover till 2025. In a bleak new assessment, the government's Office of Budget Responsibility, also known as the Office of Budget Irresponsibility, warned tax rises and spending cuts, potentially as much as 7% on the basic rate of income, are inevitable, as it poured cold water on the hopes of a swift bounce back from coronavirus. It said GDP will fall by at least 10% this year, the worst recession in 300 years, with national debt bigger than the whole economy in all but the most optimistic scenario. So there you go. They say it's the cost of the coronavirus, but it's actually the cost of the lockdown. And, tax is going to rise, unemployment's going to rise, debt's going to rise, all bad stuff, all totally avoidable. Here we go. Let's continue. The report came as the next head of the Office of Budget Irresponsibility warned that the government can no longer rely on inflation to tackle its £2 trillion debt pile. Richard Hughes, who is set to take charge of the Office for Budget Irresponsibility later this year, said previously the trick for politicians had been to whittle down the real value of the country's liabilities. I didn't know we were being tricked. This is news to me. However, that will not be possible with the massive debts being racked up during the coronavirus, also known as the lockdown crisis, as around a third of the stock was now linked to the RPI inflation rate. The respected IFS think tank has suggested that tax rises equivalent to 35 billion a year will be needed to stabilise the government finances once the immediate crisis subsides. An indication of scale would be roughly 7% on the basic rate of income tax, and it continues with more nonsense. This guy, Richard Hughes, also says, kind of in the small print lower down, that he was the specific preferred choice of Rishi for this position. So I'm sure he's a really great guy. A lot of bad things. What you see during this lockdown from the government is how they slow walk bad news. You kind of, at the start of the lockdown, they said, hey, this is only going to cost us a couple of $100 billion. Then it was a couple of $100 billion a year for 5 years. Now it's 350 billion this year. And, with all this high unemployment, debt's going to continue to be high because you've got so many fewer people working, creating production, and also paying tax. government only gets its money from tax. There's no other income source for it. So what they try to do to increase their spending power is take on new debt, dump it on young people, and also inflation. You water down and dilute the value of our currency, and it becomes totally worthless. And this is what's going to happen. And the big secret with the UK pound, as I've talked about very recently, and and on more than one occasion, is that it's backed by the US dollar. I've got a $100 bill right here. This is what backs up the pound. And of course, the US dollar used to be on the gold standard. It is now no longer. It came off at the Bretton Woods conference in 1971, and it is now backed by nothing except explosive debt. So the pound's not worth much if it's backed by the dollar, because the dollar's not backed up by anything other than this paper. So it's a pretty sad state of affairs. I hope we can get rid of people like Rishi, people like Boris Johnson that are just spending us into a debt oblivion. Being not able to afford 100 billion means that we definitely can't afford 350 billion a year. The government tried to twist it by saying, oh, well, we couldn't afford it in normal times, but these are not normal times. Affordability is based on production. It's based on value. It's based on credit and wealth. Just because you have a greater need for more debt does not make it more affordable. All this debt's being pushed onto the next generation, and I think it's totally outrageous, so we need to start doing something about it. So I hope you like this video. Please continue to follow these and subscribe to the channel. Also, make sure you buy your own copy of the anti-lockdown freedom flag. People are liking these, getting a lot of inquiries. It's been a real spike of inquiries from Leicester for some reason. People seem to love them up there. But anyway, I hope you choose to buy one. They're a great flag, great to take to anti-lockdown events, great to take to anti-lockdown protests, and look forward to bringing you more of these videos here pretty soon. So thanks very much, and we'll talk to you soon.